Hi everyone.
Hello.
This is Pramod Puchisia, CEO to Comms representing ISF today. And we have a very interesting session today. We're trying to try and understand post-pandemic opportunities in India, and we'll try and get perspective on the same. I have with me my panelist, Manmeet, who's the Deputy CEO, V5 Consulting and a board member of ISF. We've got with us Navneet, founder and CEO of Afsar HR Services. We've got Prashant, who's the director from Tech Systems. We've got Samir, MD and CEO of Multiplier. And we've got Sanjay, who's head of search and staffing at Randstad. So with that, leaving no not having a delay, I'd like to straight jump into trying to give you a perspective of what we intend to cover today. Uh, India is a rich nation with talent in abundance. We are a population of 135 billion people. Sorry, 1.35 billion people, and that's a very large workforce, talent force that we have. A $2.95 trillion economy at this point of time, and going very, very strong in terms of growing on an average every year at 8-9%, and continue to do so. We've got a median age group of about 28 at this point of time, which by 2050 is expected to be about 38. So that's like a huge talent pool that is going to be available, a young talent pool, a working talent pool that is available for us to sort of plan our next 15 years ahead. We've got current service exports of about $240 billion. That's projected to go up to $1 trillion in the next couple of years, and that's a very large number. And I'm sure it's possible. We're growing at a very, very fast pace every year. Our digital payments, and I'd like to sincerely bring about this. Our digital payments currently is about 5,500 crores in the country, which actually fuels a lot of economy across the e-commerce and fintech space, which is a very large space that we are seeing growing in India. Currently, we are about 42 billion transactions at this point of time and growing very, very steady. We have a lot of fintech business coming in, which is enabling this for us at this point of time. At this point of time, why we speak, while our organized staffing, ISF members roughly about 1.2 million. We also got a 15 million gig workforce at this point of time, which is accounted for as per various data points that we've got, which sort of completely shows the way and the models ahead for us, which the industry is going to see. We've got various sites, international sites like platforms, sites like Upwork, which currently register about 14% of their workforce from India at this point of time, and very, very steady growth in those numbers as well. Uh, at the macro level, we have our education policy going for a change, which is going to bring in huge change for the days ahead and years ahead to look at, because that's going to bring in reforms at the where it's needed most. Our vocational skilling across the country with the government initiatives and various programs is at full-time high. We've got various bodies trying to do vocational skilling, technology, non-technology area, which is going to be a big boon for the staffing industry and employment as a whole. We've got a very large internet penetration across. We have very strong, steady telecom infrastructure, which is available last route, last mile in various villages at this point of time, connecting all the dots that we need to have a very large organized workforce. With all these, we only are headed for opportunities ahead. With this, we can always look at these, and all these only point out in direction that India is the place to be. With that, I will leave the note to my fellow panelists. My first question is to Manmeet. Mandeep, what is the impact of technology? What is the impact of pandemic in technology sectors that you see at this point of time, post-pandemic, and what do you see is the forecast ahead for you?
So I think thank you, Pramod, for briefing us all about what's happening currently in the country. You see, there is a lot of shift in technology transformation that we are seeing currently. You see, there is a you can see 100 million workers in the 8 countries. As per the recent one of the surveys, 100 million workers have to really change their occupations, and this has never happened in the past. Obviously, because of, as you were rightly speaking about the digital transformation, the payment gateways coming in, the payments that we are seeing all of the global work companies outsourcing work to India in the business process management as well as in the IT domain. The captive centers going up, our startup ecosystem picking up. The technology demand and the skill demand has really picked up so in a very big way. And this is we see that this is going to be continuing to rise because of the remote workforce, as well as the ability to hire people anywhere in the world. So India is more and more going to be the talent bowl for the whole world now. And I think the new skills required, which are going to be changing every weekly basis, you see in technology front. So I think there'll be a total shift in paradigm in terms of the talent supply chain, what I feel, for the whole world. India can be the talent supply chain, and for that, you see, there is a big change of how people are hiring today. Employers are not only hiring in a traditional way of contract workers and permanent workers, they're going towards platforms to hire. The thought process change of employees, from the employees have changed their thought process now in terms of making new beginnings, making new changes in their career, which is very difficult. It's a reboot kind of a thing. Reboot in terms of thinking of thought process of employees, which is very good, as we see that people are changing jobs, people are taking up gig employment seriously. People want to work, on gig employment platforms. They want to, make money. They want to change their direction, which was very, in the previous past era, we see that Indians were not they were very conservative in their approach. But because of the pandemic, where we are in the middle of pandemic right now, also people are very flexible and agile in terms of what they'll take up. Remote workforce has also added on new. There's no geographical boundaries today. You can hire anywhere in the country, people in anywhere in the world to work for your projects. That's also adding on to technology transformation, technology changes. You have got great flexibility to hire people, and you also see the diversity impact to diversity on all this, in the employment landscape. Also, a lot of women workforce, retired workforce, because of technology transformation, they're coming into the league. We are able to Employers are going to be making it, more easier for them to hire talent now and making them work and more productive. Yes, technology will be the background to all of it, to manage the workers, their expectations, their productivity changes, which is still a gray area in terms of productivity, and still people do not have full confidence on it. But because of pandemic, we see a lot of changes happening now. And the last piece I would like to say is the retention and redeployment of these people, which are working right now remotely. The connection that people used to have earlier, and now today, more and more technology will play a big part there in terms of how you retain people and how you redesign your comp and ben strategies, and how you are able to motivate them remotely and making their and report their productivity regularly. So I think there is a lot of shift which we all have to go through, and all of us are changing. We never imagined to hire people on not on our roles but working for a customer, but today it's true, right? So a lot of good things happening, and things are changing rapidly. Thank you, Pramod.
Very rightly pointed out, Manmeet. I think if I have to rewind back, we are a country going from the government job to gig model at this point of time. So it's a
Correct.
complete circle in terms of engaging the workforce at this point of time. There was a time where we would, and I think continues to be, that there are, in a large portion, government jobs, because of stability, was the first and primary choice. And of course, then comes the permanent private sector job, and then of course the staffing industry. But the world's changed, and I think the way gig is model, I mean, it's a complete pyramid which is opposite at this point of time, and that shift we are able to see. Rural to urban is a good change as well that has happened. I think that's one primary problem that we had, because we have a large population in the rural country at this point of time, which you did sort of point about. So that, with the internet movement moving, or rather not wanting to move to urban because of the penetration, I'm sure the technology sector can get. So I think very interesting perspective. I forgot to, or rather, my colleague Amit Dugal had joined in late. Amit, we did not have an opportunity to get to introduce. Amit comes in from Meraki with a very strong platform in technology. Welcome, Amit. So my next question is to Navneet. Navneet, there is a huge mindset change that we all have had to go through. You've covered a lot of sectors, specifically in the large e-commerce, blue collar sectors. What are the kind of changes in mindsets that you've seen in those sectors?
Thanks, Pramod. In my opinion, in pandemic or still we are in pandemic, as we know, the biggest achievement for our staffing industry or organized staffing companies for this in this country is that we were successful in changing the mindset of employees and employer both. For corporate also, we have changed the mindset because the way we have hired people, we have retained them, and we have arranged and managed the manpower for them in during all the first wave, second wave, and third wave. I remember that few of the staffing companies used to get the migrant workforce from the places like Bihar, Jharkhand, Odisha, or any other places in flights, private buses, and all. And the way they have managed them in places like Delhi NCR, Bangalore, Tamil Nadu, it's commendable. So it has changed the mindset of corporates also that organized staffing company is the best, or organized staffing industry is the best way to go ahead for the staffing. Same happened with the associates also, or candidates or job seekers also. Earlier they used to do it by themselves. Now they are taking help or taking support of staffing companies or staffing industry all across the locations, across the sectors and verticals. And they are also getting dependent on us, on staffing companies too, for all the supports and their requirements. Various labor codes or various labor laws, the way staffing companies or organized staffing companies are following. So they are way beyond than the traditional workforce. Like you rightly mentioned that 1.5 or 15 million workforce are still in our unorganized sector. So we are far better handling the organized staffing as compared to unorganized sector. So in during pandemic, we have our organized companies has done like vaccination drive. They have given social security, insurance, ESIC application. So all these things have changed the mindset of both corporate and associates to go for the organized staffing companies for any labor requirement or any blue collar or even white collar workers. So this I would suggest, or I would point out that this is the biggest achievement or biggest thing which staffing industry has achieved from the pandemic, Pramod.
Very true, Navneet. I think the staffing industry did show a very strong foot
Yes,
forward during the pandemic and post-pandemic. And migration, yes, was a reverse migration was a large challenge, and
right,
getting back people back to workforce was even a bigger challenge. Of course, the reverse migration from cities to rural was a challenge for the individuals, but getting back the workforce was a challenge. But I think we all managed to do that very wonderful well. I think very very rightly pointed out. My next question is, related GICs. India is of course a very large center for global in-house centers and various technology organizations setting up base in India. My questions to Prashant: what do you see as the change in business strategy post-pandemic with the GICs? And how do you think the staffing industry or overall by and large the industries have sort of acclimatized to the changes at this point of time? Prashant.
Thanks, Pramod. I think GICs have been one of the large contributors in terms from contracting and from hiring. So typically, even prior pandemic, they used to have a normal curve. So on an average, we used to see about 1,000 plus requirements flow in every single month. But I think what we started to see post pandemic is that there was a significant amount of steep raise that the GICs had. Okay, and um, even as about 40 to 50% were the growth in terms of how we started to see the rec flows that started to happen for almost about 1,500 and an average a month, right? And I think Manmeet kind of briefly touched upon on that in his opening. Is around on saying why was some of these steep increases started to happen was largely the GICs in India, other than being part of the business continuity for their headquarters, right? We also started to see them drive a various digital cloud and data transformation out of India, and that contributed to a significant amount of a steep increase in terms of the demands that started to flow in various customers. That's one of the things that we started to see. And um, and especially topics like candidate centricity and contractor centricity, which I think has been around for a while, became a lot more relevant in a post or maybe in a pandemic kind of a market, which started. And as an organization at Tech, we've always had a very core belief of serving our contractors and candidates a lot higher than our own interests. So we started to see a lot of appreciation from clients and from the candidate community. Simple examples like, say, hiring was just not a partner problem, right? It was also a problem where a hiring manager had to hire, because the roles started to diminish, the engagement model started to diminish. It's not anymore was perm or versus contracting, but it was more around on saying, "Hey, I need to hire a right talent," and the talent can come in from contract or can come in from perm. So we started to see those line of engagement started to diminish. So it was as much as a hiring manager's problem to attract and get great talent for their organizations. And I think there was another earlier point that Manmeet touched upon, was also around on the engagement. It's not just about hiring people, but I think since a lot of these projects were quite critical in nature, just not attracting talent, but it was also about retaining the talent, became one of the number one criteria as well for the hiring managers. So because they were no more doing very basic quality or basic development projects, right? Because they were people started to work on very critical digital and cloud and data transformation projects. So as an organization, we've been practicing this for about 38 years now. We started to see a lot of appreciation around candidate and contractor care centricity a lot more during pandemic. Pramod.
Sure, true. I mean, one of the true challenges, of course, has been employee engagement with post-pandemic working from home. While it has its benefit in terms of productivity, but that's not the way of life, at least so far.
Yeah.
And trying to retain talent, or rather, I would say manage, or rather keep them motivated and keep them collaborated. Of course, there are various tools to it, but the human side continues to definitely be a question mark, and it's a tough workaround for sure. But I think we're coping for the same. So yeah, I think that's interesting. So GICs continue to be able to adapt well to the situation is nice to know. My next question is to Sanjay. Sanjay, what are the global stakeholders' expectation from staffing companies from at this point of time and how does it impact us as staffing partners? I mean, eventually their clients is and of course us. So it's we at the end of the day work directly, indirectly for the customers globally.
Sure. Thank you, Pramod. And a big hello to everybody watching the webinar. And I hope everybody is safe and well. As far as the global stakeholders are concerned, yes, they have some very specific expectations from any market, not just India. And a couple of things that has been a very important learning for us here in Randstad. One is, of course, when organizations, whether they're client stakeholders or they're other staffing firms, what they look for is political and economic stability. That is number one on priority. And I think it's important to talk about that. And the good news is, we are A plus there. Things are on the right path as far as both those metrics are concerned. And that's very, very critical as organizations look to come into India. A lot of them have come in in different parts as either liaison offices, and a lot of the ones that have not yet come to India are very aggressively looking at India. Some of the things, or I would say the moves that the government has made in this path. Number one is, of course, Make in India, Digital India. These are all very, very important initiatives which creates employment, which is very, very critical for the staffing industry. The PLI system, the production linked incentives, again, very, very critical. $26 billion has already been in investment mode in almost 30 sectors in India. And that's, again, very, very critical. Sectors like textile, semiconductors, I mean, it's all over the news. So the government is very, very serious about investing and working with the corporate sector in developing these sectors, which obviously means more employment, both in perm and in temp. All of you all spoke about the startup system, and it's so important to talk about it. Uh, Over the last 5 years, the number of startups have gone from 500 to, believe it or not, 60,000 startups. And these 60,000 startups have produced 600,000 jobs since 2018 alone. So that's a huge, huge, job market that which is there for the staffing space. Ease of business, a single window clearance concept is very, very critical, and the government is working on that. As far as staffing is concerned, labor codes play a very important role. We have central labor rules, we have state government rules. What's very important and pertinent to mention here is that we have 44 central labor codes. The good news is, as we speak, there's a process to consolidate those 44 into 4 broad labor codes. This will simplify business. This will make life easier for especially multinational organizations that are coming to India. As far as the other aspect is concerned, which is obviously talent, Pramod, spoke beautifully about this point. India is, the labor market of the world, and what better statistic than to talk about the demographics, the 15 to 60 years category of people. From 61% today, it is bound to increase to 65%. That means the younger population is going to get, the net is going to get wider, which means a huge opportunity for staffing firms to capitalize on. And these are very, very critical, important aspects. The other thing is the opportunities per se. The privatization, the public sector enterprise policy. Great example is the recent one, which is Air India, which is privatized. Huge opportunity for organizations in the staffing space. And I'm pretty sure this is the first one on the list. These large projects definitely enable staffing firms to think big. India is always going to be about volume. It's going to be about profits, but it's also going to be about scale. These initiatives by the government, also in terms of skilling the population, not only helping in manufacturing operation, but also skilling the population, gives organizations the confidence that, hey, not only do we have more jobs coming into the market, but the government and the private sector together are also looking at skilling talent. India still continues to be one of the most attractive staffing markets in the world. We're still behind some of the other countries in APAC, but one of the most attractive, and we're at about $5.5 billion today. Even in the pandemic year of last year, we grew at about 5%. So as you can see, when somebody will measure the year on year, when we finish this year, it is going to be a huge growth. So we couldn't be at a better time in India, and all multinational clients of ours, and I'm sure the competitors are looking at India in a very attractive fashion, and the future is going to be good. Back to you, Pramod. Thank you.
Thanks a ton, Sanjay. I think you brought in a brilliant perspective to various aspects, and you're absolutely right when it comes to the timing. The timing is just perfect. We have a lot of startups, and our startup economy is doing really well, which gives, of course, a large-scale deployment of workforce at the ground up, but it also brings in a lot more edge towards technology in terms of product development and enhancements, which is an area that we've been always a services country. We've got a very large technology workforce, but in the services side. But now I think we're seeing a large shift in terms of product development, and that brings in a huge, I would say, the top line or either the bottom line sort of increase for organizations, which is wonderful. I think with that, I would like to take the liberty of moving down to understand what's happening in the e-commerce sector, maybe the sectors around the new age economies at this point of time. Samir, my next question is to you. Could you tell us what are the kind of changes that you've seen post-pandemic in purchase patterns and how it's impacted our retail and e-commerce industry?
Yeah, thanks, Pramod. Thanks for the question. So see, work from home and this hybrid model of working has really changed the way we purchase. And the purchase pattern has also taken a complete changeover. So largely, the way things are shaping up is that people are sitting at home and really re-looking at the household things. They're looking at the way various electronics are at home. So maybe a while ago, a refrigerator of 300 kg was good enough, kiloliters was good enough. But I realized that over a period of time that I need to have a bigger one, right? Maybe I need to really spruce up this particular corner. I need to have a better place, because what's been happening is that while we all have been operating out of swanky offices, now we want a swanky office at home as well. So that's where the purchase pattern has changed drastically, and especially the working professionals now, while they've been forced to sit at home, they are re-looking at the way things are at home, right? So they've started really picking up small things. So maybe I had a semi-automatic machine, it doesn't work anymore. I need to have a fully automatic machine because that solves my purpose, right? And there is a joke around it. While men are being forced to wash the utensils, all this while this was fine, and we know that we don't have the help of the maid, domestic help. I am opting for a dishwasher now, right? So I got to place a order for a dishwasher, and I need to really have that address. So uh, our organization works with a lot of consumer durable clients, and we realize that there's been a surge in various products in the consumer electronic space, and everybody is really looking at enhancing and really modifying various corners of home. So that basically has really changed the way people have started looking at buying things. Even retail was the way where people used to really experience the product, but the way the brands are operating is also that you wish to buy, I will have a demo arranged at your place, and hence there is a source of employment now, right? So a lot of people who were working and operating from retail and trying to really sell to consumers at the retail place, now one person was addressing say 10 or 15 or 20 or 30 customers at a retail space. Now these 30 customers need a demo at the same time, hence you need to have more feet on street to really be able to deliver a demo at their doorstep, right? So there's been a change there. Also there are brands who are looking at taking smaller things as well to the consumer and giving them more and enough options. So you shortlist, say, out of 50 products I have, you shortlist 5. I will bring all these 5 to you at your doorstep. You choose one, and you have the option to buy one, right? And we know the payment structure. One of my fellow colleagues just mentioned about the way things have changed in the digital payment space. So people are making payments sitting at home. Cash is not a problem anymore, right? And if we were to look at online, purchase has gone up drastically. One of the city which has really adopted purchasing online is Bangalore, right? So 70 plus of consumers are now buying online, right? From 20% pre-pandemic to 70% plus now is a huge shift, right? And how is this entire thing happening, right? You still need people to be able to facilitate this entire purchase, right? So while we see that at an all India level, in consumer electronic space, it's like 15% growth. In smartphone, it's like 10% plus growth over the last year, right? Which is pre-pandemic. So, which basically talks about that purchase patterns have not changed. People are still buying. It's the means and modes that have changed, right? And you still need manpower. You still need staff to be able to really facilitate this entire purchase journey, right? So that's been an interesting shift, and I'm glad that this seems to be continuing. And in the retail space also, rather than more of retail stores, it's becoming more of retail experience zones for a lot of brands, which are a change now. And and more brands are really looking at creating experience zones and experience stores to be able to really help the consumer fixing a slot so that it is sanitized and I go there and I'm able to really make a purchase. Also, if you look at a lot of retailers, around 70% plus retailers are looking at really inducting a lot of technology to the purchase cycle, right? So if I walk in as a consumer, I see touchless screens there to be able to bring me a demo, a digital payment at the store level, right? So a lot of change in the retail space is also being experienced in India, and that's a huge change. And I think digital is the way to go. Back to you, Pramod. Thank you.
Thanks, Samir. You brought in a real good perspective. There's a different way of looking at how the business will grow, and I think that's really nice to hear your perspective and understand what you've gone through and experienced from your customers. Yes, it is a change on ground, and staffing industry is being at the forefront of the e-commerce industry to enable customer experience, not just delivery, but as you mentioned, 4 to 5 products, and you select, that's complete customer experience, and that's what staffing industry today in India is bringing a change. Fantastic. My next question is to Amit. Amit, we've seen a lot of technology, and you, of course, yourself represent an organization which brings technology right at the hands of the blue collar workforce, as we can call it. Can you tell us what kind of changes you are seeing due to enablement of technology in the blue collar workforce, which is being adopted by the staffing industry? I think we can't hear you. Amit. There seems to be a microphone issue with your microphone. Amit, I think on the right hand side you have an audio setting. Maybe you want to look at that. Maybe I'll come back to you, Amit, in case you're facing difficulty. We'll come back to you on the point. Let me go up to, or we'll just wait for a minute maybe. Amit, are you there? If you want me to come back to you. Okay, so I'll come back to you, Amit. Thanks. In case in the meanwhile you can fix it. My next question would be to me back to you. I think, can you give us a perspective of gig? You mentioned though briefly on the gig workforce at this point of time. So how do you see gig, both in the space of e-commerce as well as non-e-commerce, and you in the technology sector? I mean, where all do you see the adaptation? Why would people want to be a gig worker, not a permanent job? Just throw some light on the same one. This has been one of the most interesting keywords for Google at this point of time also.
Absolutely. So before that, I would like to just give you a little bit more on the skill set change that we are seeing in the industry today. What Samir mentioned is really true. Our expectations from a candidate has also changed. A store manager earlier was only managing the store, but for a very large telecom organizations I've seen, and some large brands, they're expecting the store manager not only look after the store sales, but also look after the area sales, and also look after the customer service of that particular brand. So the skill sets of the people have also changed, that you are expecting from a candidate. Now coming to the gig workforce, which is very much you hear today, what's the outlook looking like, and where are these gig workers, and why is the change? I touched upon in my initial address that the mindset of people have changed. People had lost lot many jobs earlier. Some of the people, because of the job loss, have permanently thought the thought process has changed to be a consultant in a white collar space, for example. You will also see similar thought process when you look at Uber drivers earlier. No longer is an Uber driver only a gig worker, right? So there are people who will make money while doing deliveries on the e-commerce segment. They will make more money than a employment. So that the mindset change going towards into deliveries. I'm also seeing white collar segment also hiring gig workers. We are seeing fintech companies, especially in the startup world, who are activating the B2C consumer products recently. You must be seeing the payment banks coming in. You are seeing so many companies out there activating even small stores today. You cannot hire these people in as employees because there are short-term projects of activating, for example, a fintech product. So these activations, you see multiple thousands of people being hired across the country, tier 2, tier 3 towns, delivering an activation, for example, an activation of a payment bank. That's number one. You'll also see gig workers and consultants who have transformed from an employee to an IT developer and a developer or a coder, now wanting to be working for a global platform like an Upwork, and in working from India to a global destination, being a consultant. Very much comfortable doing that. You see retired workforce today, which is now thinking that I can work and make some good good use of my experience by working for some companies, whether it is a domestic company or an international company. The retired workforce, 60 plus to 60 to 70 people, also coming in as consultants to give you advisory in financial services or IT sector. You see the when I was also touching upon the edtech industry and startups coming in. Edtech industry, which is, as you can see, most of the investments coming to India and unicorns coming into this space. You see a lot of education educationists, I would say, coming into a gig working space because they are working from home on contracts. They would like to take up job of teaching kids. They would like to take a job of doing doing some work for an education institute or a tech company. So I think the mindset of coming into doing a job and getting paid for it on an hourly basis, on a daily basis, and also having sustainability of this particular job is pushing people to get into this kind of work. So it's no longer a secret anymore. There has to be, and going forward, it will be three pillars: the contract workers, permanent workers, and gig workers. It will be a mainstream employment employment across the world. India is also going to be witnessing the same growth here. People they want to take charge of their lives. They have seen that there is a lot of uncertainty in the times of COVID, and they have taken the plunge of going out there and developing their own skills, and also working on platforms, also working on contracts. So I think that's a good thing, that people are going out of their comfort zones and trying to build that talent. And the last piece is that because of all these, no longer you need to train people in a classroom anymore. Because of bite-sized learning concept, because of the edtech companies, because of so much of content available today to learn, there are school students and college students launching their own companies while they're studying, right? And I'm sure you must be following Shark Tanks of the world, and Shark Tank culture is no longer going to be, it's going to be there, because people are going to be, more involved into doing innovative things in the country today. And the young population, and as well as retired workforce population, great opportunities for everybody in terms of technology, non-tech, retail, BFSI, fintech, which I was talking about. I think there is, and as Samir was also talking about, how people are buying stuff in the retail store, but demonstration is happening on at home. So those are gig workers who are doing all this work, right? We recently delivered a great project for a multinational firm by 300 housewives calling and doing that job for 1 month. And we actually got this project done in only 2 weeks. We didn't have to recruit people. We had a platform. We used the platform. We had 300 ladies working from home. Did the campaign beautifully. So it is I just give an example and a thought process on where all these. And sometimes some of the jobs might not be very attuned to gig work. For example, you have a cyber security, you have a secure platform development. You need milestone based development to be achieved into certain development exercises. There you might not see gig workers coming in. But other than that, where you have customer services, where you have feet on street activations, you will see edtech, as I was saying, there are a lot of penetration happening there, Pramod.
Thanks, Manmeet. Thanks, Tan. My next question is to Samir. Samir, what's the change that you see? I mean, Manmeet brought in one point of gig workers, contract workers, and permanent workers working together. Where do you see? How do you see this happening in the e-commerce space? You work a lot with e-commerce and retail.
Yeah, thanks, Pramod. Pramod, as I mentioned earlier, that the purchase pattern has gone through certain amount of change, and as a consequence, this has led to service at the doorstep, and e-commerce has really started meeting the expectation, exceeding the expectation of their shopper. So the way they're managing this entire thing is that you place an order and I deliver within 24 hours, 48 hours. You have a Prime membership, and hence you get a priority over the other customers. So there's been a complete shift in the way they manage this entire backend, and the backend is being managed again by a lot of these gig workers, right? One of the data point which says that while we speak, we have 15 to 16 million gig workers in India, which is likely to grow to 70 million in next 8 to 10 years. That's a huge change and a increase in the overall number. And as rightly mentioned by Manmeet, it's by choice, right? And the secondly, it's also that a lot of brands and a lot of companies are looking at performance based payouts, right? And you deliver this, you get paid this much, right? May it be logistics, may it be delivery, may it be creating an experience, may it be onboarding a retailer, right? So we all know, while we work in India, a lot of your digital payment gateways are onboarding a lot of retailers to use the digital payment gateways, right? And there's a huge competition there. So everybody is going out to the same retailer, and they're saying that you work with me and I pay you X% commission. Now, how does that happen? Somebody has to go convince the retailer as well and onboard that retailer onto that payment gateway. Now that's pay for performance, right? So there are a lot of changes in the similar direction, which is very, very performance based. And also, if I was to look at personal services, we know a couple of brands like Urban Clap, Urban Company, right, which is personal services, transport, logistics, and retail collectively contribute to 11% plus overall growth in this sector itself, right? So that's a huge shift, and we will see this more often. And while we may have similar sessions, we will see the numbers going through a change. Today I mentioned 15 to 70. Next year I may be saying no, 15 to 70 was a lesser number, and it may go up to 100, right? You never know. So that's the kind of change in the entire gig worker space. Thank you, Pramod. Back to you.
Thanks a ton, Sameer. My next question is to Prashant. Prashant, what kind of skill stacks? I'm going down more to absolute. We've got some questions trying to understand industry and where the way forward in terms of skills are. So, what kind of skills do you see really the GICs wanting to sort of look forward to in the recent times, and how do you see staffing industry sort of shaping up and coping up with the same?
Sure. Thanks, Pramod. So I think the first thing, I just wanted to build on my previous point that I was sharing on saying today we start to see an increased amount of diminishing between real perm jobs versus contracting job. As the GICs are going through and driving a lot of digital transformation, cloud and data, right? Today increasingly a lot of perm jobs have started to open up in contract. Okay, that's one clear things that we started to witness with the various GICs or even a little bit of tech product companies as well. So where the clients really don't matter the kind of engagement model that you bring a talent, but what it certainly matters to them is saying how these kind of workforce can really, and what type of people and workforce can come in to support them, right? Now, while I say this, I just want to take a quick small illustration in a banking financial services, right? So if you take payment itself, today in the pandemic era, the banks have started to, even for their own internal processes, if you look at it, a client on board is completely done online, right? The governments wanted the banks to go completely digital. So a lot of regulation works started to kind of enforce that pushed the whole digital journey for various GICs in specific to banking and financial services. So the existing platforms where through which the payments gateways have been built do not really support the kind of a level of volume or traffic that kind of today exists. So the whole architecture at which the payment gateways are built requires a complete re-architecturing. Okay, so now that kind of started to build with various technologies. Like I'm sure Java is one of those hot most top. You kind of do Google, everybody will kind of figure out, and everybody and anybody would need a Java backend or a Java full stack kind of resource who's been on the IT contracting side, right? So that's one skill that started to really see take off like anything. And the reason why some of these skill sets started to become very important is also when you understand the client, what transformation that they are going through. That's one end of the story. The other, if you look at the cloud part of the piece, right? Today, India is very open and very favorable in terms from having cloud setups out of here in India. So, you would start to see a lot of AWS, GCP, which is Google Cloud Platform, right? Today has started to increasingly see demands and forecast. So now, whether are these jobs, do we have talent available for these skill sets? Honestly, not. So pretty much whether it is client on POM or on contract, we kind of struggle to identify some of these talents coming up, right? What we've also learning is that a lot of reskilling that's happening within the industry, right? where you can't produce somebody who's a GCP person right off the shelf. What we've also starting to see is that customers are very open today to do hire and deploy kind of a model. They're willing to look at young talent who could be brought in, who being certified, working on certifications. That's one thing that what we're starting to see. While I say this, I think Manmeet spoke about a little bit on the skill sets, right? So today, what we are also learning is that the rate at which the amount of skill sets and technology stacks are coming up in the market, and especially in the IT and the technology side, right? One cannot really keep up the pace. What we are also seeing is that you may now start to need skill sets and talent which is very specific to each of those roles. So I'll give you a simple example. Today, earlier it used to be if somebody were to be on C++, they could easily migrate and become a Java developer. Okay, but today if you look at the roles that are expected and skills that are coming in, you will need very specialized people to do specialized work. So what we may increasing to start to see is that the stacks are now becoming very non-fungible in a way. Okay, so which means that no more that you will have people to go on one skill sets and upgrade. So you may require very specialized people to do those work. So we certainly see that's one area that we certainly see. And the other element on the pandemic part, we started to see subgroups. Everybody were to say that, okay, hey, you know what, banking parts the large, but within banking we started to see a lot of payment kind of thrive a lot more. Within healthcare today, because of the pandemic, there were a lot of organizations today were doing clinical research for Pfizer, for GSK or AstraZeneca. So a lot of data, started to be maintained about people, or that kind of work started to come into India. So we saw a lot of data warehousing skills kind of really, being looked after, and a lot of data had to be of people had to be kept. So there was CRM like Salesforce, SFDC became one of those top hot skill sets again in the marketplace. These are some of the areas that trends and skill sets that we certainly saw promote during the pandemic, right? So which were quite hot on the market at this point of time.
True. I think that's very, very true, Prashant. There's been a huge lot of change. I think while we've got these technologies like Java, which always continue to be required, but I think there's a loads of skill sets coming in. The no-code platforms, the low-code platforms, so many multiplication applications. I think the speed at which skill changes today, or rather required, is moving really fast. I think Amit is back. Can I get my question back to Amit? Amit, good to see you
Yeah,
back.
yeah.
Yeah,
Apologies, there was some
no
technical.
worries at all. Good to have you back. Go
Yeah,
ahead,
Pramod,
Amit.
what was your question? Yeah, the question was about, I think, about the
Yeah,
how
so
build
how do
a-
you see the tech enablement, the blue
yeah,
collar and adaptation there? Really?
that's
Technology in the
something
hands of
very
people.
close to our heart because we are a workforce management platform. So what we create, we for whom we are creating, we're creating for a very low strata of people. So there were several challenges, but there were a lot of learnings. What was the learning? That we had to create a tech which can reach masses. These are masses, and the people who are at this level strata are not available on the platforms where we can go and simply reach them, tell them what are the opportunities available, come join, earn a living or build a career. So so whenever we were building a tech, we had to create two kinds of experiences. We had to look into the user experience and the user interface also. The tool which we were developed needs to be simplified to a level where you know where this tool not only reaches the masses through the social channels available, but also uses various APIs whichever are available, and also uses the data which is available on all the government sites, so that auto population of the data can happen. So for example, when a person is at a level of, let's say, housekeeper would, even if I give him best of the tools, he might make a mistake while recording his bank account. So there are APIs available in the market which you use to ensure that the data is captured in a way that it's foolproof. And also this kind of people, what we have seen is that we have to give them some kind of supervision. So a layer of supervision is built while you create a tool, not only for these for the supervisors who are available in the field, for the client also. So when I say supervisor client, they also have an interface where they can check, monitor, help these kind of people to really use the technology to give the data what is required, either for their job or for to make their life simple. And while also creating the tool, which we learned that even after geofication of the India areas, there are a lot of places where we are sourcing day in day out people, and it's very difficult to get connected with them because the smartphone penetration is not available. They are not very friendly. Still, the what we feel, these kind of gifts or the SMS facility which is available still plays a long, a good role in whatever we are doing today. And uh, the facility, like he gets a call saying that if you interested, press one; not interested, press two. Such kind of facilities are still there. So what I meant by overall saying, even after putting the best of the OCRs and everything, what we see, the tech user interface and the experience, what these kind of people actually require, has to be simplified to the level where it's available in its own language. It's so simple that he has to just put two three data points, and rest all data gets captured, since he has visited many centers, voter ID card, Aadhaar, everywhere. So, and but there is a challenge with the government APIs, that all the government data which is available, is the APIs are not open. So there are reliable sources from which you get APIs, but still the request to government is to really open it up, because for an employer like us, it relatively becomes very easy to onboard somebody, to reach somebody, if you have the right data in place. That's what my even after putting the best of the tech. So
So Prashant,
um,
I hear,
one
I
of
think,
one.
I hear that the industry is taking up and capturing, or rather, industry is trying to adapt, but there are problems around it that you see. But it's good to see that we are trying to overcome the same, and user interface kind of discussions have started happening for the last bottom of the pyramid, absolutely, in the blue collar space. That's a huge need. During post pandemic, the need is only higher at this point of time, because the number of touch points that we have as an opportunity on the shop floor is obviously much lesser, at least. So that's very interesting. I think, Sanjay, I'd like you to cover the same point. Maybe not from a, I mean, Amit's brought in the blue collar workspace. Can you help us to understand technology usage for staffing industry by and large? What's your perspective the same?
Sure. Thank you, Pramod. Just going back to one of the comments that you mentioned, that gig is probably the most searched word in the internet. I can bet you top dollar that the second most searched word will be work from home. Uh,
Sure.
Randstad has just released a Future of Work report, and it's very clear. When you look at the responses in this report, that work from home is here to stay. If you actually go back, if you just look at the chronology before the pandemic, it used to be work from office. Then during the pandemic, it is work from home. And over the last, I would say, 8 to 10 months, work from home has actually transformed into work from anywhere, because it's not necessary that you have to work only from home. You have people who are in different destinations and doing work seamlessly. So the entire paradigm has shifted. And Navneet touched upon a very important point about mindset. So the mindset has changed for both the employers and employees, and that's very, very critical. And it has a direct correlation to staffing. Coming to the impact of technology, it is technology that has become the pillar, the mainstay that most things are revolving around, most sectors, and definitely the staffing sector is no different. If you categorize it into different aspects, first, the sourcing or the candidate acquisition perspective, it's interesting to know that 75% of resumes are actually unqualified. And this is where technology plays a very, very important role through machine learning, through AI, of increasing the accuracy. And we're seeing that, and we're seeing all organizations, whether it's staffing firms or whether it's the employee themselves, benefit from that. That's the first part. Second is the entire process of onboarding in staffing, which is a huge, which is the bulk, which is the bulwark of a staffing organization, and that's where the heavy lifting work between the staffing firms and the customers happens. So the entire process of onboarding, verification, payroll management, clock in, clocking out, attendance, leave records, all of these were very paper intensive, if I can use that word. A lot has changed over the last 2 years. Everything has become virtual. And this is where technology has played a very important role, which has also led to the emergence of a lot of HR startups. In fact, Randstad has a Randstad Innovation Fund that we created about 5 to 6 years ago, specifically because we saw this as a huge opportunity for this industry. So clearly, technology is impacting the way we source candidates, the way we manage payroll, and not just typical staffing, but also a lot of organizations, including Randstad, does activity-based staffing. Here again, technology plays a very important role. Smartphone is no more a necessity. Everybody's got a smartphone. Some very interesting statistics that I discovered in the course of my prep for this. Out of the 7.9 billion people that exist on this planet, 6.4 billion smartphones are there. That's almost an 80% penetration. Fantastic information. And that tells you about how the entire way that we consume smartphone and technology has changed. And this has a direct correlation to how staffing firms have evolved and will continue to evolve using technology, making processes much more automated and simpler. We did some analysis and we've realized, Pramod, that our efficiency and productivity has improved by almost 30 to 40% over the last couple of years, specifically because of technology, because of shortening processes and improving productivity amongst our workforce. It also blends in with very interesting, the 3P bottom line approach that we have in Randstad, which is people, profit, and planet. Planet is very critical, and often we feel that it doesn't get talked about. We're saving a lot of paper. There's a lot of paperwork that is now digitized and automated. Can you imagine the thousands of payroll records per customer that we used to do? It's all automated right now. So this, in a sense, is really helping us drive efficiency, productivity, and staffing firms are able to give it back to customers. So technology, clearly, it's turned the tables around, and everybody's benefiting from it. Yes, as Amit mentioned, there are a couple of other things that we need to be careful of. For example, the penetration of technology in second and especially third tier cities. This is where we need to look at these, and this is where the government and the corporate sector needs to come together so that we're able to improve the infrastructure, so that we can leverage the entire talent pool that is available in India. Thank you. Back to you, Pramod.
Thanks a ton. I think very interesting perspective. I hope some organization can use your innovative fund. At 2Coms, we're also very bullish about HR tech. I think just to give you a perspective, the current business volume worldwide on HR tech is about $22.8 billion. That's a large amount of money going after HR tech. We've invested ourselves on a platform, which is a gig tech platform, trying to connect the dots on gig. That's a investment I think all staffing organizations in one way or the other would have to do, because we have to adapt to technology and changes. That's wonderful. So I think now my next question is to I think my next question is to Amit. Back to you. Can you give us a perspective of you also touch upon the manufacturing segments. There is a question here in the panel here which talks about what the industry is doing well. Can you take us through what are the sectors in manufacturing that you see post-pandemic which are growing? How's that shaping up? Because there's a lot of interest in trying to understand what sectors will probably see upcoming demand.
Yeah, thank you, Pramod, for the question. If you look at Meraki overall as a business, whatever business we do into staffing space, the majority of the business which we do is into logistics, e-commerce, and then in manufacturing. And we have been studying this post-pandemic and pre-pandemic also. The scenarios have been a little different. Some of the sectors in the manufacturing side which we feel are doing really well and are large prospects for us in terms of business is the electronics, the textile, farm equipments, and then we also see not very large surge in FMCG, but we do see it as a promising factor, keeping in mind that in the pandemic, we saw that FMCG and pharma were the only manufacturers who were not really got very much affected, which is a reality known to the entire industry as of today. But electronics and textile and farm equipments kind of sectors are doing really well now, because government itself is trying to put more emphasis on made in India concept. When this Because government doesn't want these manufacturers to go outside India. Rather, they're giving them schemes like PLI schemes have been opened up for all these sectors, which were closed in between and then again reopened for another 5 or 6 years or 10 years, so that these manufacturers manufacture more and get incentivized for the all the uh, uh, what exactly incremental sales which they do from the base year. If the base year was last year, whatever they sold, and then if they're doing better, they get incentivized to 3 to 4% of the revenue is given by government as a cashback or a kind of subsidy to them in the tax regime. So this is helping a lot in manufacturing, and the kind of skill set which we see, there has been a little shift in manufacturing, particularly in another sector which in manufacturing is precision components, which is auto ancillary, which is required by almost all the biggies as of today. So what we see, the skills get earlier were more from the diploma and the other background. But as a Miraki, whatever interactions we have been having, and we have been placing almost 3 4 thousand people month on month, and what we see is that the skill set now requirement is only 12th pass, or the skill set requirement is only a ITI guy. So the industry is opening up to these kind of people, where they say, okay, give me a guy who can understand, read, write, and willing to do hard work. I will train him into my machine line and employ him. And then on the retention side, we have seen that they are encouraging us. When we went to them, we said we will give them kind of a job insurance scheme. We'll give them, early salary scheme or a loan scheme, which is predominantly not available to these, associates or the candidates whom we say, as we call them associates because they are associated with us. So companies are helping us, and they are encouraging us to do such kind of schemes. Even companies themselves have started doing. Many manufacturers never used to give them you know sorry to say this, because as a staffing company also we were only using these people as numbers. So but they have their own human side, where they have their own needs, their own prioritization, like they would like to have a job near to their home, not would like to travel too far, social security, kind of insurance covers. So these all things, as a work management platform, we have been going and telling clients, well, after talking to the candidates or the masses whom we interact with, that these are the requirements which they have. And the clients have now started recruiting them at the nearest location possible. Earlier it was like, in manufacturer in Noida would say, no, I would only like to have people right from Bihar, Jharkhand, or from Assam. They stay longer with me. But now the cases is different. So now the Noida manufacturer is willing to take people in and around 150 or 100 kilometer radius area. So the industry is opening up. Another fact always is that the demand is up. So probably is one of the reason why they are, you know cutting down the kind of requirements which they used to emphasis on before that, and it's helping the staffing companies to place more and more manpower. What we have done is that we have partnered with some NGOs, some local panchayats, where we are able to get people. We have created a training program, because we know which are the industries they require people. We train them in batches, and then we take them to the manufacturer. It only helps in a way that from the day one, this trained guy is little more productive compared to the guy whom they take in and then they give a training on the job. But we are seeing a very good shift in manufacturing side. Almost all the manufacturers, kind of manufacturers which I mentioned, are doing very well. And we see that going forward also this trend will of requirement will still go up, will not come down.
Thanks, Amit. I think I was happy to catch two phrases from you. Numbers are what staffing companies you would do, and now we'll have to look at the human side of things, and that's exactly what our company's punchline is, or other value statement is, the human side of things. So we have to move from numbers to the value of an individual, and look at how we can focus on upskilling the individual and empowering the individual, and that's exactly what the staffing industry in India is taking shape. We are almost over, I think. Thanks, Tan, for this. Organizers who have given us some additional time. I have last question for Navneet. Navneet, a completely different perspective. How do you see the women empowerment and diversity taking shape post-pandemic? Are they impacted, not impacted? Do you see them growing? What's your perspective to there, to the same?
Thanks, Pramod. I see inclination in the participation of women in workforce. Since the pandemic began, I can tell you that 6% increase in women participation is there in Indian workforce. And it's majorly because of the culture of gig workforce. And work from home option is there that gave freedom to women to work for home and work from home simultaneously. Some government initiatives like maternity leave, longer maternity leave, also supported women for pursuing their career and working while pregnancy or post pregnancy. But the most important thing is the gig culture, which encouraged women for taking participation in workforce. Like they got the freedom to choose the time slot in which they want to work. They can work from home, or if they have to go out, they can choose the time slot. They can choose the days in a week in which they can work and in which they cannot work. They should not work, or they don't want to work. So these are the things which encouraged women, and the participation of women in Indian workforce has increased by 6% since the pandemic began. One of the most important factor which I can witness, or I can tell you, that encouraged women for coming out and working in companies like or working in manufacturing sector, or more over e-commerce segment and all, that these things are now started being taken care by organized staffing companies. So they are more comfortable, or they feel more safe if they have been handled or taken care by organized staffing companies as compared to traditional contractors, and they are getting better treatment, better job security, better social security from the organized staffing company. So these three, four things has triggered the women. More and more women are coming out and actively participating in Indian workforce. Promote.
Thanks, Tan, Navneet. I think very true. I think a combination of remote work with hire, train, deploy, and being able to engage women workforce or diversified pool, which wasn't available so easily or wasn't at the first in the forefront, would actually be a huge boon for our country at this point of time, with interpenetration being very high. I think these are wonderful times to engage on new models of workforce. With that, I think our session comes to an end. I wanted to just check if there are some questions that we can take at this point of time. There are some questions on the chat window. I see one from Sudesh, which says there are a lot of changes happening in the demands in IT demands, a different skill sets requirement vis-a-vis earlier. What role do you see the government playing in rapidly changing the taking care of the skill set requirements? Manmeet, would you like to take up that, or any one of my fellow
Yeah.
panelists would like to take that?
So I think just to give this a lot of boost, I recently had conversation with NSDC and some of these agencies which are working towards this. A lot of focus in terms of upskilling, and from the Skill Development and Entrepreneurship Ministry, as well as the MIT. So there's a lot of focus on developing these skills on IT, technology, communication, media. That's what they are working towards. A lot of funds have been allocated in terms of Future Skills Prime launched by the government, NASCOM, as well as the government were launching these schemes to upskill people on not only technology guys, but also non-tech guys getting the basics of technology right. Because you're going to be having a feet on street working on on activating a fintech platform, for example. So he also needs, similarly, manufacturing guy also needs to be strong in technology background. BFSI insurance, and there are startups which are coming in, as you can see, maximum unicorns in the country. A lot of focus on skill development and new age skills, which are going to be helping us. Our unicorn, we are the unicorn of the whole world now. So I think that's going to be helping us to enabling all the talent coming in, additional workforce which we have seen. I'm sure that's going to be getting a lot of opportunities for the talent. And the second thing I was seeing also, just outside of this question, while the opportunities of upskilling and learning is there, the hybrid workforce absolutely is going to be here to stay. You're going to be seeing vaccines. 2/3 of employers have made it mandatory, going to be there. You will see hybrid workforce for all skill sets is going to be there. So you absolutely have more opportunities to learn and more investments by the government coming into these kind of skill sets, basically.
True. Thanks, Navneet. You're absolutely right on the point that while technology skills need to be upgraded, even non-tech workforce needs technology. And we recently did a program with AWS to target a non-tech professional to sort of become cloud or friendly at this point of time. And that's a huge need. And a lot's happening through the platform of NASCOM, MIT, and various other platforms on the same. So I think we are safe on that side, that we are making the right steps of investments as a country at this point of time. I'm just checking if I have a few more questions, if there are any. I think there's one question which sort of gets answered by Sanjay on the chat. Thanks a ton, Sanjay, for that. I think we are good with all our questions. Now, I don't see any more questions. That brings us to an end to the session. I thank the World Staffing Summit to have given us the opportunity. And I thank all my fellow panelists who have joined me in making this happen. And most importantly, to the members who have sort of attended the same today, I hope we've been able to bring some perspective and value to the same. Thanks a ton, everyone. It's been really nice engaging with you.
Thank you, Pramod.
Thank you,
Thank
Pramod.
you so much.
Thank
Thanks,
you
Pramod.
all.